Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Uncensored CMO. Now we're talking challenger brands again, and one of my favourite brands at the moment is Gymbox, a brand that is really changing how the gym is seen. Now they are marketing on a very limited budget, and they're using those constraints to their advantage to really disrupt the market and get people talking about them. I'm joined in this episode by their brand and marketing director, Rory McEntee, and he's telling us all about how they become so disruptive and how they get their message across in very challenging ways. This is a great episode. There's so much in it. You'll enjoy it. Rory, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Really looking forward to this. I absolutely love challenger brands, and I think Gymbox is one of the standout challenger brands in the market at the moment. Can't wait to get into that. But before we do, just give people a bit of a sense of how you got into marketing and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, so my journey in marketing was quite of a meandering kind of river into the brand and marketing kind of role I'm in now. I graduated from university in Dublin. Went away to Boston for a year and worked in bars, which was great, selling tickets to clubs and stuff. And then I went back to Ireland and did my master's. And while everybody then finished their master's, went into kind of graduate programs for Unilever and Glanbia and Reckitt Benckiser, I actually went agency side. So I wanted to kind of challenge myself in terms of actually working for interesting brands. And, I wanted to do stuff that was, Heineken, McDonald's, Gatorade. I was working for really interesting brands where I had a personal interest. And that was the whole idea kind of when I was young. And then from there, I kind of realized I wanted to be the owner of the brand. So I made the jump client side. And from that agency experience, I was used to that fast pace, quick turnaround work, and wanted to work in brands or for brands that I was interested in. I wouldn't want to work for, no disrespect, to a butter brand or a dog food brand. And, working for challenger brands like Everyman Cinema, who back in the day were, really new and innovative, onto Paddy Power, and then a couple of interesting kind of Pizza Express and Papa John's in the food and beverage industry before landing back into kind of my challenger mindset of Gymbox.
Yeah. Now talking about challenger brands, I mean, Irish boy working on Paddy Power. I mean, it doesn't get better than that in terms of challenger brand, does it? They're probably one of my all-time favourite kind of examples of challenger brand, where they're proper underdog taking on big, dominant players in the betting market. And I think some of the most creative executions I've ever seen in my life come from Paddy Power. But and they're famously controversial and famous for pushing the limits of what you can get away with. What were some of the most kind of controversial, newsworthy campaigns that you saw coming out of Paddy Power?
Yeah, working for Paddy Power was like being in I don't want to say a boys' club because it was male and female, but it was a real kind of fun kind of uni sort of style culture. And you'd come up with ideas. We'd go down to the pub. We'd come up with a couple of ideas, and you say, "Well, that will never land." And actually, somebody would say, "Well, why wouldn't we try it?" Now, I was there back in 2012, where some of the biggest ideas, which you probably couldn't get away with now, happened. So I remember, again, I was quite junior. It was my kind of informative years. There were some great people at the time. But things like, I don't know if you remember the blind football team, the five-a-side blind football team, where they kicked the cat into a tree. So the cat had a bell, it was running around, they thought it was a football, and they kicked it into the tree. And, ASA complaints, and that ad was banned. That evolved into, taking over, Paddy Power were the original kind of guerrilla marketing. So going to Cheltenham and having the Paddy Power sign, like the Hollywood sign, like that had never been done before. And again, it was one of those brands where you could just try something, see what happens. The ASA were on speed dial. It was like the bat phone. You'd have kind of the calls coming in on a daily basis. And it became almost a point where you wouldn't try to get banned, but it was kind of part of the fun to see how far you could actually push the boundaries. And I think the biggest one that I remember and being part of was the Euro 2012, where we had this idea about lucky pants. So we were like, let's create these Paddy Power lucky pants. And we managed to get Nicholas Bentner, who was playing for Denmark at the time, to actually wear these pants. And if he scored a goal, he was going to show them. Now, what's really interesting is two things. A, Denmark were sponsored by Ladbrokes. They had an association with Ladbrokes. So again, it was us trying to find a really kind of disruptive way in to kind of talk to our audience. But B, we knew we'd get a fine from UEFA if we did it. So we actually built into our budget planning, like I call it, we have a fine pot. So when we do these campaigns, we know we're going to get fined. So in the end, Nicholas Bentner scored a goal, actually scored 2 goals, lifts up his top to reveal the Paddy Power pants, and the internet went into meltdown. And we were fined from memory, €1,000 for that, which is great. Again, it helped us ride the PR story. And actually what happened, I remember a couple of weeks after, was Serbia were fined €80,000 for some racism chanting in the crowd. And we were still able to turn that into a PR story saying, is racism, not seen from UEFA as bad as, advertising. So really fun, interesting place to kind of, you get an idea and you could just get it to market. It was fantastic.
I remember meeting Stuart Kenny, actually, one of the founders of Paddy Power, years and years ago. And he tells the story that the way they used to operate was that whenever they come up with an idea, the legal team had 2 hours to talk them out of it. And if they didn't, it was going ahead. Is that true? Is that how it was? Is it literally, we'll do this unless you can talk us out of it?
Yeah, it was the culture was very much, whereas now I think what happens is you come to, your team, your CEO, your legal team with an idea, you debate it, you try and kind of understand, will we get in trouble? What will happen if we get this wrong? What will be the repercussions? Paddy Power was the opposite. We would go in and we'd say, we're doing this unless someone tells us and can really prove to us why we shouldn't. And that's why 9 out of 10 ideas actually saw the light of day, which is why Paddy Power for that kind of decade were untouchable in terms of the marketing that they did. And again, it was something that you've got to be a brave brand to do that, because actually what happened was Paddy Power were Marmite, a bit like Gymbox now. Some people absolutely hated what they were doing. We had I'll never forget, one of my favorite adverts, we had a zebra crossing and it said, let's make things more interesting. We had two old people trying to cross and we put odds 2 to 1, 3 to 1 if they're going to make it across. And they're the type of things that people got angry about. And we would just say, we'll just do it. Let's see what happens.
I remember too, I thought Stuart was a master of reframing as well, because I remember when he talked about Paddy Power, it wasn't about betting, it was about entertainment. And he would say, I can't remember exactly the odds, but he'd say, if you spend £20 consistently on watching a match over a large course of time, you'll probably get on average 17 of those £20 back. And the margin will be, Paddy Power margin, whatever. And he said the heightened enjoyment of every game, because you've got a stake in the game's outcome. So if you're betting on, this is a while ago, but Rooney scoring the last goal, you'll pay attention, and actually your pleasure of the game will be heightened for £2.50. Or I don't know if those are the margins, but the way he framed it as being about entertainment, not about being betting, was, I thought, quite clever.
Yeah, and it was very much one of my learnings going in there. So Paddy, it's very interesting actually. I look at all these brands who are repositioning themselves as something they're not. So, Gymshark recently, we do gym. They're a clothing brand who, are repositioning themselves as a gym brand. Gymbox are a gym brand repositioning themselves as a lifestyle brand. Paddy Power is a betting company, and the positioning we had back then was an entertainment brand. We didn't see ourselves as, a betting company. We wanted to entertain people. And absolutely, if you can get people coming back and constantly top of mind, they'll go and bet with Paddy Power and they'll have more enjoyment. And it is that kind of brand association that you were trying to have as an entertainment rather than a betting company.
So bring us up to 6.5 years ago. How did the opportunity come up for joining Gymbox, and why did you join?
I've always, as I said earlier, worked for brands where I've got an interest. So I feel like it's gone through my whole life cycle. I kind of worked for, cinema. Then I was at, Paddy Power, kind of sport. Did Pizza Express, got really fat for a while, free pizza. And I was like, all right, I need to kind of work all this off. So I ended up joining Gymbox as kind of my fitness life took over. And it was a really interesting story, actually. So they reached out to me a couple of times, which was all on the back of Paddy Power, because I think Gymbox wants to almost be the Paddy Power of the fitness world. And they never had a marketing hire, funnily enough. So the founder, Richard, came from marketing background. He was Wyden and Kennedy, and he worked for Nike in New York at the time. And I'm sure we'll come on to it, but he took the idea back to the UK. But it was a very much marketing first brand. He knew marketing, but as times were evolving and social and digital was coming, he wanted somebody who could bottle up that Gymbox energy and kind of explode that across kind of all the different marketing channels. And I met the CEO, Mark, and we kind of had an interview over a beer. And straight away, you think kind of fitness brand, having a beer. We had a couple of beers. We just got chatting. It was the most kind of unusual interview ever. And funnily enough, it was opposite the Gymbox in Old Street in a WeWork. And we just had a couple of beers and we got chatting. And before you know it, it was just handshake over the table. You got the job. And I think it was a natural progression for all the kind of mischief making and stuff that we had at Paddy Power that I hadn't done in quite a while. It was building up. How do we then kind of take this into Gymbox? Now, the challenge you had, Paddy Power had huge budgets, really big budgets, and you could do things like Paddy Power signs in Cheltenham and TV adverts. Now, Gymbox is a very different brand. It hasn't got massive budget, so you have to be a little smarter. But that challenge was something that I was like, right, here we go. Let's do something really crazy and shake up this industry.
And you mentioned Richard, the founder. Just for anyone who doesn't know the Gymbox story, give us a bit of background to why he created Gymbox, how it's different, and the journey to here.
Yeah, so Gymbox is 20 years old actually. This last year, so 21 years old, and Richard was over in New York, and he was seeing all these kind of exciting gym concepts coming, where they had wrestlers in rings where you could kind of go in and do boxing. They had spin classes with drag artists, and it was like something that just wasn't in the UK. The gyms in the UK were kind of boring, wooden floors, kind of white walls. So he kind of took this idea, brought it back to the UK, opened it up in a disused car park in Holborn, and it was almost this kind of mantra of like the antidote to boring gyms. The idea was we're going to go and stick a finger up to this boring gym culture that exists in the UK. And the vision then was all about trying to make working out as fun as going out. So we're going to take all the things you enjoy in your life, put it in the gym. So the idea was he didn't build the gyms with traditional gym architects. He got nightclub designers in, neon lights, put DJs in the club. They're all in, you're here now. It's this kind of, like you come in the front door, it looks small. You walk down, it's a 40,000 square foot of just kind of, madness. It's a dungeon, neon lights, DJs in the corner, boxing ring, not tucked away. It's in the middle of the gym. And we do all these kind of crazy bits. Like it's almost those surprise and delight moments. Like you could walk in here on a Wednesday night and there'll be a band playing in the ring. Classes are kind of the big kind of USP of what he wanted to do. So taking from New York scene, and what we say is we have like classes from holistic to sadistic and everything in between. So it's everything under one roof. So however you want to train, and we have combat classes, aerial classes, spin, strength, dance. You can come and do pole dance on Friday night. You can do Muay Thai classes. So the gym, it almost kind of wanted to spin and put gym on its head, but in a way that was very much brand and marketing led first rather than product.
Actually, as not a particularly big gym goer myself, although I probably need to, so I'll be making use of this a bit more in future. I think. But it absolutely strikes me as that, because you look at your website, it feels like a pop video almost, doesn't it? And the people aren't wearing gym gear; they're wearing kind of more like what they wear to a nightclub. You walk in, and it feels like a nuclear bunker you're walking into, kind of like hazard warnings, all this sort of thing. And then the thing I love is that it's kind of like vast, but it's also quite intimate in that you could probably get hidden anywhere here. I mean, it took us about 10 minutes to find you this morning. I got a bit lost on the way down. But it doesn't feel like that everybody's on show feeling that you get when you walk into a normal gym where the lights are high and, you're looking at all the muscly guys working out, feeling a bit second rate. None of that. It's just like huge, vast, like lots of options. You can find your own corner, do your own thing as well.
Yeah. And you know what? That is it's something we've worked really hard on. So the whole mantra of Gymbox is anything goes. So you can come into Gymbox and work out how you want to work out in any of those disciplines I mentioned. So you might want to be a CrossFitter, or you might want to be a yogi. We don't judge you when you come into Gymbox. Anything goes, and you can train for whatever goal you have. So you might want to train to have a six-pack or compete in a competition, or you might want to just train so you can have a couple of beers every Friday night. However you want to train, Gymbox is that place where you can kind of come in, and it's not a cliche community thing which gets thrown around quite a bit. There's actually this real kind of vibe where you can just come in and be that person you want to be and not worry about what anyone else thinks, which is a great feeling. You can leave all that at the door, come in and just enjoy yourself for that hour and a half when you're in Gymbox.
Now, as I was thinking about Gymbox, I wanted to kind of break it down into some of the principles, I guess, the challenge around principles, because probably the most influential person in my career is Adam Morgan, who wrote Eat Big Fish, and I absolutely love it, and been studying challenges for a long time. And we had Greg Hahn from Mischief on the podcast. In fact, just as we're recording this, it's going live. And one of the phrases he used, which I absolutely love, is use your opponent's weight against them, sort of thing, and reframe the category, which I absolutely love. One of my favorite examples is like Vinted and Back Market, where what they've done is they're promoting secondhand clothes and making secondhand clothes cooler than the new clothes, because you save the environment, you save a lot of money, you do good, the whole thing sort of thing. So how are you guys kind of reframing how people see the gym? I think you've touched a lot on it already, but how are you kind of reframing how the gym is viewed?
So I think the big thing we do, we've got a great class studio team. So I think, you mentioned earlier on, you need to come to the gym, and it can feel like a chore. And I think there's that perception people have around, oh, I've got to get up and go to the gym. And what we're trying to do is reframe that by, I mentioned it earlier on, around making working out as fun as going out. So the classes we put on, we look at societal and topical bits happening. So where, Beyonce in the country scene is, risen in the last kind of 6 months. So we have a dance class called Hoedown Showdown. And you come in and you get boots and hats, and it becomes this really fun dance class. And we've kind of put on these really entertaining classes that, make you want to come, enjoy it, meet people. Gyms are the new kind of dating apps as well. People are coming in and meeting kind of partners, and they're kind of elongating their days and going out for drinks afterwards. So what we're trying to do through really creative and unique classes is reframing what people's perceptions of the gym is. And I think that does really work, because our classes are really renowned for just being, some of them kind of push the boundaries a little bit, where we've got human weights and different things. But actually, for the most part, there's a real sweaty class behind there, but it's done in a fun way.
Yeah. No, that comes across a lot, actually. Another kind of mindset thing, actually, in a conversation with Mischief last week, was about how you use your constraint to your advantage. And you kind of touched on this. Paddy Power's got kind of big budgets, right? But you at Gymbox, you don't have big kind of paid media budgets, do you? So you've had to think differently about how you kind of create noise, create content, and reach people. So how are you using your constraint to kind of, to your advantage?
Do you know what? I love having no budget. It's great.
It's great, isn't it?
Do you know what? It really makes you think about how do you get it to market. So look, there's a few things we do. First thing is, look, we have this attitude. We're Gymbox. We're a little bit Marmite. We know that actually we're going to piss off quite a lot of people through our marketing, and that's okay, because not everybody is a Gymbox member. So that's the first thing. So we do that. But, I think you mentioned, we were talking before, and the first time you saw Gymbox, you had yellow paint all around the Farringdon area. And that's what we do. We get our teams out. Now we have chalk graffiti, I like to call it.
This is an important point, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen?
This is, the chalk graffiti. Because all jokes aside, I have the council contacting me, the police contacting me occasionally. We go around and actually spray paint Gymbox, around the corner, and directional signage for that sort of local marketing piece. But actually, after 2 days of rain, it comes off. So actually, it's kind of a nice little piece, and it's just a smarter way of kind of, we don't have out of home budget to do stuff, and that's just kind of one little example of how we've got to be smart with budget. But actually, we're a really talked about brand, and a lot of that comes from kind of creative classes. And I don't even know if I want to get into it anymore, but sometimes we don't even make the adverts real, kind of our fake kind of out-of-home bus advert.
Well, that got a bit of coverage, didn't it?
That got a lot of coverage.
Yeah.
That got a lot of coverage. Well, I'll tell you a funny story about that one. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but
just describe it, because it's a great execution.
Yeah, so the idea, yeah, so we have aerial classes, and for anyone who hasn't seen it, we had this idea of advertising. You wanted to look down. Aerial, you're hung up on a harness, a trapeze, for example, and we wanted people to be able to look down and see this advert. So we had this idea about, what if you advertised on top of a bus, as if you were looking down on it from a building? Now, The Economist did it, 1990s, but let's forget about that for a moment. So we had the idea, and the line read, "If you're reading this, you're a natural. Gymbox aerial classes now available." And we looked into it, we mocked it up, just to see if we thought the idea looked good. CEO gave it the thumbs up. Love that. Let's get it done. And at the same time, we actually approached a media agency to see if it was an option, and turned out you can't advertise on top of buses. So in typical Gymbox fashion, we said, well, that's not going to stop us. So we just pushed it out as if it was live on social media. And it seemed to just cause, it was around the time Maybelline had done the CGI tube eyelash one, and that was getting a lot of controversial, quite positive talk. But I think our one just seemed to, people didn't know if it was real or not. I think with the CGI Maybelline, you knew it wasn't real. With the Gymbox advert, people weren't sure if it was real or not. And I think that was the piece that caused a little bit of a debate in Adland in particular, with a lot of people calling us out for being untrustworthy with our adverts. Now, we got so much PR on the back of that, and it cost me about 250 quid. It was probably the most impactful, and I say this, campaign we've done in about 2 years. And, the view from the business was, people are talking about our aerial classes, and that's what we want as our objective. And so kind of the outside noise we had to block out a little bit because there was a lot of controversy around it.
Well, we'll come on to some of the kind of like beliefs you have about that, because I think whenever you work on a challenge brand, you're going to be at the bleeding edge a lot of the time, and it's how comfortable that feels, and where does a risk become a dangerous risk, or where is a risk a good risk?
Yeah. And look, we always try and push boundaries, and I think to that point around as well, how do we're not a lot of budget, make noise. We're quite good at it. We're quite good at it, and we're quite happy to be a bit of a Marmite brand and to kind of shake the cage a little bit. It's a bit of fun.
It's a good point about no budget. I remember when I used to work in Britvic years ago, we had reasonable budgets. People would often say, "What would you do if you had no budget?" Right, but inside you knew you had budget, so you kind of like, well, we do actually have 5 million quid or whatever to spend. So people entertained that as a thought process for about 5 minutes, then carried on and did their out of home campaign and the new TV and the on-pack promotion or whatever. And then I moved to a private equity backed soft drink business where I actually had no budget. So all I had was I had a packaging budget to redesign the Juice Burst, was the name of the brand. But I had zero paid media or activation budget, nothing, no, not even trade budget or anything like that. So all they gave me was 100 grand to redesign and relaunch the actual packaging itself. And I looked at the brand, and it's called Juice Burst, and I thought, well, let's go really simple with this. Like, what if rather than have a picture of exploding fruit on the pack, I actually explode fruit and I film it in super high res on a Hollywood grade camera, and I use augmented reality. So when you put your phone in front of the bottle, the fruit actually bursts out of the pack. Now this is 2003, right? Augmented reality as a whole thing was about 6 months old, right? And I tracked down like one of the kind of startups in the area, a company called Blipper, and I went to them and said, could you actually do this? And they said, well, almost. And I said, when are you launching? And I kind of gave them the date. They said, all right, we'll try our best to make it work by then. But so rather than get a photographer, I actually got this kind of like, proper film studio, high grade camera. And I had to employ randomly I had to make the world's smallest electrical charge.
Love that.
Because it turns out, right, when you blow up a blueberry, right, it's like an electrical charge will just literally blow it to smithereens so quickly that you'll miss it on film. So we actually had to cut a charge 32 times. So
Wow.
I set a record for the world's smallest.
That's impressive. I know. I love that. And you wouldn't have come up with that idea otherwise, right?
Exactly. And the cool thing with it, they were literally finishing the tech as I was going to print with the labels. I mean, it was like so close, it's unbelievable. But the beautiful thing about it was I went to every UK retailer of soft drinks and I didn't have a presentation. I just went, get your phone out.
Yeah.
Here's a bottle. Put your phone in front of it and tell me what you think. And they were blown away by it. They'd never seen anything like it. And in fact, in my business card, right, I filmed myself giving a 30-second pitch for why you should drink Juice Burst sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I did it like Princess Leia. Princess Leia comes out like in that kind of dodgy black and white summon Princess Leia. So out of this business card, I come out of this business card, black and white, fuzzy, kind of like doing this, back to earth, you need to be like getting behind Juice Burst, whatever, talk. And my business card was blipped, was the kind of phrase I used to use it, was blipped 30,000 times, even though I'd only printed 1,000.
Wow.
And it's just like, because my business card just got handed round and got put online and people were filming the business card and doing it sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I'd never, ever have come up with that idea had I had money to spend.
No, you don't. And I think that it pushes the boundaries to make you come up with new ideas. But I think the other interesting thing when people talk to me about budget, and maybe we'll get onto it, but we have a small team. So we have a really small team who can come up with these ideas, and the ideas can come from anywhere. So we've got ideas that come from the top, and we execute them. But actually, most of the ideas come from our sales team or our reception teams, who are people who are out in London, and they see these ideas and they come to me and they say, "Oh, I've had this idea," and we go, "That sounds great, let's do it." But actually, I've got 2 direct reports at Gymbox, and what I've got to do is, with small budgets, is I almost need to have this. I talk about having kind of the best kind of army of freelancers or consultant people that I can kind of dip in and dip out of when I need to come up with a PR story or a Google ad campaign. It's almost like the analogy of an NFL team, so the American football team, where you've got an offensive team, a defensive team. I can bring on my field goal kicker, my punter, and actually you just pull the different levers. When you haven't got a lot of budget, the ideas can sit centrally, but actually then you need people who will be able to kind of deliver and execute them really, really well. And it's almost like, I can pull on my field goal person who's my PR guy, and he'll go and make sure that fake bus advert went everywhere. Or I've got my Google ad guy who'll make sure everybody sees that paid ad. And it's almost kind of dipping in when you haven't got a lot of budget and making sure you can kind of just push that advert out everywhere so everyone sees it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, one of my favorite examples of brand using a constraint is Lucky Saint beer as well. Like, what if your beer can't contain alcohol? What would you do? How would you kind of, create it? How would you market it? So sometimes identifying what you won't do is often quite a powerful kind of way to define what you should do.
Yeah, I love that.
In a way, yeah. Something else you guys do very well, another principle I think of challenger brands that I've seen is they use every single thing as media. A bit like my Blipper example of using what if your packaging has to be your adverts, or what if your delivery boxes have to be your advert, and that sort of thing. And one thing that strikes me about you, like you're saying about the paint outside, even the cookie thing on your website. It's like no ordinary cookie cutter gym. But how have you used your kind of in-house media to build the brand as well?
Every single touch point is important for us. So, you see the out-of-home stuff that we occasionally do. You see the graffiti we do. We've done kind of some really interesting kind of Google ad stunts as well, where we've targeted our competitors and done some fun bits. But actually that journey in the club is really important because signage, we have to have quite a lot of signs in Gymbox. And actually we want to make sure our tone of voice is done in a really interesting way. So even our wet kit bags, when you've got all your sweaty gear, you chuck them in, but it's like we have our little tone of voice on there. We like our reps clean and our plastic bags green because you can recycle them. So it's all these little touch points that build up to a bigger kind of brand truth. And I look at every single bit and go, right, is that on brand? We don't let, I'm really... Controlling seems like a strong word, but we don't want anyone to do their own kind of in-club signage or kind of marketing or Instagram or TikTok. It's all kind of controlled centrally because the brand and our tone of voice is our USP. And even to the point where we have we have a fantastic product. You go out to that gym and we have, the best equipment, the best classes, the best instructors. But a couple of years ago, we looked at our shower facilities and we thought actually maybe our shampoo and conditioners aren't Gymbox. Now, I must admit, they were these kind of big fairy liquid, cover your hair and your body in these ones. So we actually looked at shampoo and conditioner. And again, I wanted to make sure that touch point felt Gymbox. So, we've got this fantastic copywriter who I pull in every now and again. And, we came up with this name, which was Sweaty and Fucht, which, Scandinavian or, and you got to Google it. It's hilarious, but it's so Gymbox. And again, it's just another example of every single touch point building up to that kind of bigger brand piece.
Now, there's a bit more to this story, isn't there, that you haven't yet revealed? Because you sailed very close to the wind on the IP, didn't you?
We did. So look, we're a gym brand. We're not a toiletry brand. But look, as a challenger brand, we had to do it in our own way. Now, it's funny, legally, I'm not sure I'm allowed to talk about this, but look, here we are. We are where we are. So we came up with the name Sweaty and Fucht. And again, with the copy, we wanted to talk, long copy on each of the products. We have a shampoo, a conditioner, and a body wash. And we developed these bottles. They're on sale in the gym as well as in the changing facilities. And they look very similar to another brand who I can't name. Anyway, we launched this brand. We went live with it. It was a really big launch. And look, let's be honest. It was done to create a little bit of noise, a bit of PR. Everybody was happy. And then the cease and desist letter came in to my CEO, and it was forwarded on with a bit of a we need to talk. Now, look, as a challenger brand, we you have to always kind of walk that line. Where is the wrong side of the line? That particular one, we had to pivot pretty quickly. I would love to have leaned into it and taken them on. And there was enough similarities and enough differences that, it was a 50-50 call. We spoke to our lawyers. Lawyers are expensive.
Yeah.
I'm in the wrong industry. When I looked at the lawyers' fees, I went, oh my God. Now, I would have taken them on and created a shitload of PR on the back of it. Problem is, I couldn't afford the lawyer fees. So we pivoted. But it's amazing what changing a plus sign to an ampersand can do. And actually, it's best of friends now. Best of friends.
Well, if anyone looks it up, actually, you'll see the evolution from where it started to where it finishes.
Yeah.
And it's not that different, is it? But you're right, a plus to an and branding on the side rather than the front. It was a few small changes.
Small little changes. And I think, look, again, a lot of the people who work for that particular brand are members of Gymbox. So actually...
Oh, are they?
Yeah. That's who thought it. And the guys are based over in New York, and the letter came from there. And they've obviously got a London division, which I wasn't aware of, but I am now. But look, again, as a challenger brand, my view is you've got to push the boundaries, try these bits. If you don't do them, we could have created this Sweaty and Fuck brand and just had a black bottle and white copy on there, but it wouldn't have been Gymbox. It wouldn't have been fun. So I've got no regrets on that one.
I don't know if did you come across Brewdog doing Elvis juice? I don't know if you know this story.
I don't know. Tell me.
Well, I think the third most popular beer in the Brewdog lineup is Elvis juice. It's a really, really, really popular one of their beers. And the Elvis Foundation sued them over use of the Elvis name.
They didn't.
So what James and Martin did is they changed their names to Elvis.
Love that.
Because in Scotland, the rules for changing your name are slightly different compared to England. So you can change your name more easily. So they got a certificate showing that they've changed their name to Elvis and wrote back to the Elvis Foundation. But they wrote the letter using lyrics from Elvis songs. So
Brilliant.
It's a time for a little less conversation and a bit more action, and they basically, the whole letter is using Elvis's own kind of words back at the Elvis Foundation and saying, we've changed our name to Elvis and this was inspired by our own names.
And that's an example, like Brewdog, as I think there are only a few real, what I call true challenger brands left. And Brewdog were certainly one of them for 4, 5, 6 years and that just shows, to your point around using every little kind of media bit you have to drive PR. Like it's how you do it. And as a challenger brand, people would have looked at that and gone, oh, "Come on, guys!" But it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And what? So they won the case, or did they? Well, Elvis Juice is still there, right? It's
they
still
did.
there.
Yeah, they won. Yeah, absolutely.
Love that. Really big fan of that.
Fantastic example. Actually, I know that I worked for James for 3 months. Didn't last very long. But one thing I noticed is that every single thing, everything they do, is seen through the lens of a PR story. Everything, right?
Yeah.
So. If he's opening a new bar in Melbourne or whatever, he will find some weird story or some planning permission quirk or something to create a battle, basically, or create a news story out of it. I mean, the cute one that I thought got surprising amount of coverage was they came up with this idea that in addition to a maternity cover, you'd have a paternity cover where if you had a new dog in the household, you get time off to help the dog settle in, sort of thing. Now, a relatively inane kind of like change to the company policy, but it got incredible traction where they had all photos of people that work for Brewdog with new dogs going off on paternity leave. So they thought about everything as a headline. And I think that's another really good way of thinking about it. When you don't have any budget, how do you take your HR policy, your finance system, or your store opening or whatever? How do you turn that into a headline?
Yeah, and it's so true, and I love them for doing that. And I think it's something that I try and do a little bit more, and probably push the boundaries too much sometimes. I don't know if you saw back in January when we launched our new campaign, there was a bit of a mix up with the media. So we had a poster up in December which said, "Get the rest of the year free." And the agreement was with the media agency that would be gone by the end of the year and the new campaign would be up. And I said, look, even go a little bit early because I can't have the rest of the year free live on January 1st because that's a pretty big promotion, right? And anyway, there was a little bit of a mix up and I was able to turn that into a PR story where I kind of, called them out and we said, oh God, the rest of the year free, 2nd of January is live when people come back to work. And again, we had a T's and C's on it and stuff, but you were able to just quickly take that idea, run with it, get a little bit of coverage in some kind of press pieces, and a little mistake, you can turn a mistake into a positive PR spin as well. To get the brand talked about. In a time of the year, January, when people wanted to join a gym, we were getting talked about by this kind of fuck up that happened in the media, which is great. We loved it.
Yeah. Own your failures.
Own your failure. Yeah, do it. Just lean into them.
Actually, give me a bit of blowback to reminding of the biggest sort of like failure, I suppose, marketing wise in my career, advertising wise, was this is 2002. I did a campaign in the London Underground. It was free as well. So again, it was limited constraint. You're playing with constraints. I was working on a brand called Di Serono Amaretto that smells like almonds.
Oh, I know. I love it.
Yeah. Brilliant Christmas drink. And I was pumping the smell of almonds through the underground. And at the same time, there was the big headline on the Sun newspaper, because this is before we went to war with Iraq, and it said Home Office warns underground passengers to be vigilant and look out for cyanide attacks on the underground, which back then were the most likely terrorist acts on UK soil. And then it had in big letters, cyanide, smells like almonds.
No.
And I was like,
love that.
I was like assistant junior brand manager at the time, kind of like 23.
Oh, God.
This is my first big campaign I'd done in my entire life.
Well, they're the ones you remember, right? They're the fun. You look, at the time, horrendous, but now you look back and laugh. It's brilliant.
At the time, I was just like thinking my caree's over. It's
embarrassing. What have I done?
I was in the main newspaper in Italy. I was in every newspaper in the UK. I was on Have I Got News for You? Really? But it's lovely. Sales went up 15% that Christmas, and Christmas is the by far the biggest trading period. So we had a bumper year,
which shows failures can drive sales.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a good way to think about it. We'll come on to that in terms of personal kind of approach to it as well. Another key principle, I think, with challenger brands is that they're always really obsessed with execution. And I mean, I was talking to Kofi he's the CMO at DoorDash, and one of their principles is we operate at the lowest level of detail, which for a 40 billion valued company, you think, how's that possible? But actually, I think something that marks our challengers is they really are in the detail and close to their customer in a way that, bigger brands aren't. So how does that work at Gymbox?
Well, you know what? So we've got 5 brand values, and one of them is sweat the details. So we're all about getting in. You got to sweat those little details, and that works across the business from the CEO all the way down to kind of the sales and reception teams. And from my perspective, I am, yes, I'm the brand and marketing director, but I'm a gym goer. So I am in doing classes with our members. I'm on the gym floor with our members, and I'm kind of getting in, and we don't do, again, small budgets. So when we do our campaigns, we don't do a lot of research necessarily with, proper research. What we do is we actually get a few of the ads after classes, and we kind of run them past our members and go, because they're our target audience. They're the people we want to attract, lookalikes. And we're in with those members, talking to them all the time about our brand, what they like, what they don't like, to the point where actually some of them are now friends to me personally, and we kind of go out for drinks and stuff because we are in this brand and we're on the kind of the gym shop floor every single day. So much so I actually went up about a year ago now, and the toilet was blocked in one of the changing rooms, and the CEO was there with the plunger. So the CEO went up, and this is it. You never walk by and leave a towel on the floor. We have this kind of mindset here around the gym. We're all equal. It doesn't matter. One day I'm doing strategy for 2025. Next day I'm answering DMs about, do you do guest passes? And that's the kind of mindset we have at Gymbox, which as a challenger brand, you have to. We're not this huge brand where that's not my job. Everybody mucks in.
Yeah, you reminded me, another good example in Brewdog actually is James had an online forum of 2,000 beer investors. But basically, it was called Equity for Punks. One of their constraints is when they wanted to raise £30,000 back when they first opened, and no bank would give them a loan because they were uninvestable, basically. So this is before, the very, very early stages of crowdfunding. And basically, they went to their drinkers and said, well, can you back us? And they got incredible response from basically kind of craft beer fans who invested in the business and got a tiny, tiny share of the company. And Equity for Punks, as it was called, I think this is 3 or 4 years ago when I worked there, but had raised more money in crowdfunding than any other brand on the planet. And they'd done that through, the constraint of not having it. But what
Love that.
James also did, what I thought was really clever, is he created an online forum of those investors and he ran decisions past them. So it was a bit weird, me being the CMO, because he would go and design a new beer. Right? I'd design a new beer.
Yeah.
Before I'd told him my opinion, he would have posted the design options
he knew
on this
all the
forum.
yeah.
And all these 2,000, craft beer punks, as he used to call them, would come back with a point of view, run a poll and get their point of view on it, sort of thing. It's really interesting, but an ability to stay close to your customer is essential.
It's key. And I've heard a lot of time before about reducing that kind of, C-suite to the customer a few times. And it's so true. And actually it helps you, A, nail your work, but B, get work out quicker and get real live feedback before it kind of gets out there, which is kind of why my view on the whole piece is we don't care what other people think, because we know that our community buy into our campaign or our class. Look, 15% of the UK go to a gym, right? It's such a small figure, which surprises a lot of people. So straight away, I'm alienating 85% of people who I'm not talking to. Off those 15%, not all of those are going to like Gymbox. They're going to like other brands. So we're okay as long as we're talking to our customers and sweating the details with them, and actually like-minded people coming to London will gravitate towards that. So yeah, I think you have, like what James did, have those former people and trust those people and run with those decisions is key.
It is, isn't it? Now, I thought you did one of the best presentations at MadFest this year. Absolutely loved it. It almost felt like MadFest was made for you, really, in your story. But I'd love you to talk through some of the principles that you talked about at MadFest, because I thought they were brilliant. But your idea of forgiveness, not permission, I think is really good. And linking back to the kind of Greg Hahn episode as well, one of the most striking things, the conversation I had with him, the bit that really hit me was when he said, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And I mean, I love challenger brands. And I've always enjoyed that sort of feeling of like, taking on and disrupting the big competition. But it can feel uncomfortable, can't it? And it can feel like, you're always on the edge a little bit in terms of your ideas. But I love the way you framed kind of forgiveness, not permission. So yeah, chat me through some of those points, because I thought they were brilliant.
Yeah, I think it was really fun. I love MadFest. It's great. The guys are great there. Look, I think, so the whole premise that I have is my mantra, which is, ask for forgiveness, not permission. And funnily enough, it's a true story that was given to me by, because people say, it must be your Paddy Power days or your, time at Gymbox. It was funny enough, I've got this great uncle who's a priest, Father Johnny. And when he's married all my family over the years. He's about 85 now. I think he's still alive. And he said to me when he was, we were all young, he was like, look, and because he studied business as well as kind of a priesthood. And he said, look, when you go into business, he goes, the one tip I'll give you, forget about the 4 Ps. It's all BS. You need the 5 Cs of confession. That will stand you through the test of time. And I won't bore anyone who's not into all this, but it was all about kind of admit to your sins, beg for forgiveness, and then say you'll never do it again. Anyway, so that stayed with me through my kind of career. And I don't know if it's my personality. I'm a bit reckless, but I'm almost like, don't really care what people think. And that is something that doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. And there are times it's easy to do that on my own personal level. When you're doing it for work and people are criticizing a campaign or challenging what you're doing, it can be quite a challenging thing to deal with as a person. But you got to get a bit thick-skinned over the years. So that fake media we did with the bus was a perfect example. And again, we didn't ask anybody for permission. We just did it. We got a bit of backlash. And actually, I just thought, fucking hell, you just have to kind of block this outside noise and just try and do what you feel is right for your business, your objectives. But that also kind of works internally. So I'll do some campaigns, and my CEO might kind of go, what, we did that? And you go, why did we do that? I'm going, well, like, it felt right, But it removes all that red tape. It removes that thing that I think a lot of brands who aren't challenger brands will have an idea. You go back to what Stuart said at Paddy Power. They would have asked for forgiveness, not permission all the time. The legal team have to prove to us why we shouldn't do it. What most brands do now is they'll go through so much red tape that by the time they get that campaign out there, it's been diluted so much, it's lost the essence of that campaign. So the whole idea around ask for forgiveness, not permission, works both in terms of internally, how I work and how I'll just kind of push through, get some ideas out. There's times where I might get my hand slapped, and that's okay. And I try and give that to my team as well. I say, look, guys, if I'm not around and you have an idea and you really back your idea and it's a quick social reactive piece, do it. I'd rather you do it and then we get it wrong and we learn and we fail forward than we don't do it. And I think that's where the whole mantra kind of comes from. Let's just try things. And they're the bits that make you, like your example earlier on the tube, they're the ones you look back on. And I know that wasn't asking for forgiveness, not permission, but they're the ones you look back on in years to come and go, that was great. When we did that particular campaign, that was brilliant. And one of my favorite ones actually with that idea was I've been very vocal actually about using competitors in your marketing. So a lot of brands have been doing it recently where you reference your competitor to kind of position yourself. And I hate brands who do it. Now I'm a bit of a bit of a hypocrite because I did it about a year ago, but how I did it was slightly different. So it was on Google when you search for our competitors, we then served you up with a Gymbox ad. So for example, third space near me, we'd serve up an ad that said, don't settle for third, be number one at Gymbox. And again, there was an element of, should we do it? I just do it. That's like, and we did it for ClassPass, we did it for a lot of other brands, and we got a lot of great PR on the back of it. But if we had have asked for permission from anybody, we would have, well, again, we wouldn't have asked for permission for a competitor, but even internally, people were, you're mad, don't do it. And it got so much coverage.
That's really clever, actually. I'd never thought about using search in that way. But it's a really good point, isn't it? Because rather than just buy your way into the sponsored post, you might as well say something funny about whoever's whoever owns that category.
Have a little bit of fun at their expense. Yeah, it's good. It's good. And look, you know what? I've made a little bit of a name of myself doing this. We did it with Joe Wicks as well. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but when we reopened that, look, Joe Wicks is brilliant. He was the poster boy of kind of keeping everybody active during COVID. And when the gyms reopened, we wanted to kind of come up with a really fun line. And the idea was, we said, look, thanks Joe Wicks, but we're back and we'll take it from here. And again, legal went, well, you're going to have to check with Joe Wicks if he's happy to have his name plastered on billboards all over London. We went, nah, fuck it. So we just did it. We plastered his names on billboards and we spent a bit of money behind it. And Joe Wicks, thankfully, saw the advert and thought it was brilliant. And he messaged us and he put it all over his social going, I love this Gymbox campaign. And funnily enough, I used to work for Gymbox back in 2003 as a PT or sales, and he was terrible.
No, really?
Yeah, so we never knew. And
did you know that? It's like,
didn't know that.
You had no idea he used to work.
We didn't know it. And then
Wow.
you go back to that piece you talked about earlier on and using every angle for PR. What we then did was we actually reached out to Joe and we offered him a lifetime membership for Gymbox as a thank you. So we kind of created a little bit of PR on the back of that as well. So these are the type of things that if you had have asked him, maybe he would have wanted payment or he would have said no. But we just did it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, you remind me one of the best bosses I think I ever worked for. He was an Irish guy too, but I remember when I left, he said to him, "Have you ever felt like I've overridden a decision?" And I was like, "Do you know what? In 3 years working for him, he had backed every single idea." And then he said, "I would never give you enough rope that you could take the entire company down," sort of thing. And I thought that's really interesting. He kind of like, it was really smart because he kind of gave me the feeling that I had permission, but in a kind of way that I was never ever going to sort of have enough that I could actually kind of properly do any damage to the company, which I thought was a great way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I like that. And you have to empower people, right? And I think that's my bit with my team. And I talk about control, and you've got to relinquish a little bit of control, but within reason, because, it can go very wrong very quickly if you give too much power. And I think in the world of social media, things can get screenshot and sent, very quickly, and it can kind of damage your brand in the long term. So you're right, you've got to give a little bit of rope, but not too much. But then ultimately it all comes back to me. I always say, look, it's my team, my decisions, and even if they crack on and do something that's a bit wrong, I'll never kind of slap their wrist, like, let's crack on, move forward together.
I love your mindset here, because also I think in the moment when things go wrong, like my underground example, it can feel terrible, right? But you need someone that can just take you out of it and go, do you know what? This news cycle will pass. 24 hours time, we'll be talking about something else, kind of thing. But it can feel hard, innit? So is it just innate in you that you've just got this kind of inner kind of, I don't care what people think, or have you trained yourself to kind of be able to take risks and cope with the backlash?
I think there's probably two parts to that. I think one, I've been brought up through the brands like the Paddy Powers, now the Gymboxes, where that culture has been, well, don't worry if people do give us crap, because you're right, it'll pass. But not all people are like that. So one of my team members is a very sensitive girl, and she doesn't like any sort of outside noise. And you've got to kind of almost coach those people, because my view, you get a bit older, you get a bit thick-skinned, but actually people do take offense to comments on social media about the brand or whatever it might be. And there's an element where you have to just kind of think, look, we aren't trying to, cure cancer here. We're selling gym memberships. Like, if things go crazy, no one's going to die. And I think there's an element of, if you don't take yourself too seriously and your work too seriously and you enjoy it, I actually think that kind of mindset then kind of spirals from there, which is a positive piece. It's all about have fun with the marketing you're doing as well. And don't everyone's going to have an opinion. If you're not getting a few hateful comments, then maybe we're not doing, challenger stuff enough. That's
a really good point. It's almost back to Daniel Kahneman had this loss aversion idea that the pain of a loss is felt much more than the excitement of a gain or the happiness that comes from a gain, sort of thing. And weirdly, I find on the podcast, I'll get 99 absolutely lovely comments, and then there'll be one kind of really aggressive, negative comment, and that'll be the one that I'll be sending to James and Kerry, going, "Oh no," sort of thing. Yeah, but it's human nature, isn't it? You remember the difficult, remember the nasty comments. You don't tend to remember the nice ones.
You do, but I think my view on that, they're the ones that fuel me a little bit. I think they're the ones that you kind of go, "I'm going to prove you wrong," or actually, I want more of them, because now I know I'm really rattling the cage, and that's what a challenger brand should do.
Yeah. You mentioned it, you touched on culture a bit earlier and some of the things about sweating the details. Can you talk a bit more about the kind of culture you've created in Gymbox that helps you enable this kind of disruptive behavior?
Yeah. So look, I think I go back to, the first thing you've got to do is hire the right people. Yes, the number one, if you get that wrong, you ain't going to kind of achieve those goals that you need. I think for us and for me, you can train anybody to do any job. So for me, it's hiring people who are, interesting characters who are living the London life, who have traveled the world, who've seen interesting things, because we're a people-led business. We're an ideas-led business. And actually, I don't want the best project manager in the world who'll deliver a great media plan. I want somebody who's going to come to me and challenge me and give me ideas. So I think that's the first piece is, and it goes back to my CEO, Mark, hiring me. You're having a few beers and go, is this actually an interview, or what's happening? And I think that's the culture that he's created, which is then filtered down. So when I'm now looking at bringing in either full-time staff or, as I said earlier on, mostly my army of kind of consultants and freelancers, my expert in PR, my expert in PPC, expert copywriter, expert graphic designer, it's having those like-minded people who buy into the business, buy into the kind of the ethos and the mantra of Gymbox, and kind of, wanting to kind of shake the apple cart a little bit. And they're the people that you want behind you when you push through with an idea, who aren't going to get offended when, you get that cease and desist letter from somebody, or, you get challenged for a crazy class you've come up with, which people think is offensive. So that's the first thing. If you can create and bring in those people, the rest will just fall into place, because the culture then is, the culture comes from the bottom up as well. It comes from the top down, but actually all these people that we're bringing in are interesting people who'll challenge each other. And I think then my role within all that is then just kind of backing them to come up with a new idea, which could kind of get the best PR in the world. It could fail. And it's almost kind of helping them on that journey when they do fail, that actually it wasn't a failure. We're just kind of moving on to some bigger bits.
So when you meet people that are applying for a job or want to join here, at what point do you know they're the right kind of person? What's the kind of giveaway to that this person's got what it takes?
You know what? You know pretty quickly. I think within a couple of seconds. That person comes in and it's an attitude. Gymbox is an attitude. So you can kind of come in straight away. It's that eye contact. It's confidence, and it's somebody, again, there's no age factor at Gymbox. We've got people who in this gym who train who are 17. We've got people who are 80. It isn't about age. It isn't about that sort of profile. It's all about attitude. And I think for Gymbox, if somebody comes in and they tell you a story of, I'm so hungover, I was out last night. I've got this crazy kind of, horse bar, and they tell you a story straight away. That's hired. We'll teach you digital marketing. We'll teach you copyright. We'll teach you everything else. We want those type of people, and you just know. And actually, I tend to find those people not on LinkedIn, not through our job adverts. It's actually just word of mouth, being out in London, meeting people, talking to people, getting in somebody, friend of a friend who knows this band, who knows this guy who's looking for some work. And it's those creative people that are just out living life and not in the boardroom.
And another principle, actually going back to Adam's Eat Big Fish, is the idea of a lighthouse identity, which I always thought was really good, as in you stand for something and you attract your audience rather than try and win them. Do you know what I mean? It's a different thing. And in a way, what you described there is the same for employees, isn't it? If you stand for something, you're really clear on your positioning, that's going to attract people, right? People are going to want to work here because they really believe in what you're doing.
They do. And I think, we're very lucky because of what we do, and the crazy classes we put on, the slightly disruptive but not offensive marketing that we try and do, is people gravitate towards wanting to work for Gymbox. And not just people who are into fitness, people who are into, as I say, lifestyle brands. And, the applications I get from some amazing brands, people who are working for some amazing bigger brands in Gymbox, who want to work for Gymbox because of what we do, is obviously a credit to my team and what they're doing and the work that they're getting out. And it just attracts people. And we have people who are creating adverts for us free of charge, who are sending them, we want to work with you, here's some adverts I've done. And it's amazing to see people want to do that. Now, of course, they're trying to get a job, so I get that. But it's a testament to a small challenger brand like us that we have people who would give anything to work for Gymbox, just for their creativity to get out there. It's fantastic.
I want to touch on the business side if I can, because like we're sat here, we're in central London, just near Chancery Lane. This is a vast studio. I mean, it's very impressive. So, unfortunately, people listening won't get a sense of it, but we've got classes everywhere, loads of rooms. You've got a boxing ring. It's square footage of this?
This is 40,000 square foot.
40,000 square foot.
Huge.
Doesn't look like from the outside, by the way. It looks like you've just gone down a back alley from inside. and then it opens out TARDIS style, right? Yeah. It's the kit is all impressive. It's not that far. I know we're recording this early in the day, so I'm sure it's going to get a bit later. But how financially, how have you made it work in terms of the model? Because it's a pretty plush. I know it's not, I wouldn't say plush is the wrong word, but it's a pretty impressive setup you've got. You're in a very kind of expensive area of town. And there's others like this. How does it work financially?
Well, a lot of gyms will do 20, 30, 40 pounds to kind of come in because, look, if I don't use the gym, I don't want to spend too much money, I'll pay. We've gone, again, as a challenger brand, we flipped it. We are pretty expensive, right? We are, £120 a month. So in that, model, we're quite expensive. But I think what we do is you try and offer, I liken it to kind of go out and eat a steak, right? Someone's going to go out and you can go out and eat a steak for £5 or you can buy a steak for £45. They might taste the same, but actually it's all the different benefits you get. When you go out and buy that £45 steak, you're paying for the service, you're paying for the ambience, you're paying for that whole experience. That £5 steak, you're probably going to be sitting in a diner. It could taste great. It's going to have the same protein. Gymbox has kind of done that whole experience piece with the DJs and nightclub. The business, the model is you don't want to oversubscribe the gym. You want to keep it to that level where actually people feel like this is an exclusive place. So it's almost that, I liken it a little bit to kind of like a Soho membership where it's kind of one in, one out. Look, there's kind of different cycles throughout the kind of calendar year where we lose people. London's this kind of transient place. However, the private hires that this also then attracts with people wanting to do, hire out the space to do a corporate event. So the corporate is a huge part of the business. So 80% of our business actually comes from corporates. So you've got, MediaCom down the road and people who have 500 employees who will come to Gymbox. But then the model is, as we get bigger and we grow, I think we've probably just regrown after COVID, re-looking at our membership type, re-looking at our clubs. Fortunately, had to close one club, but we're now at that point where we're ready to kick on again. And the idea will be, again, taking that Soho House kind of model. We don't necessarily see ourselves going into some regional places in the UK. It's going to be attitude. So Berlin, Stockholm, New York is kind of the idea. So that's how we're going to make the brand grow as well with the kind of commercial model.
Yeah, well, it makes a Soho House model, isn't it? Like, go in the high footfall metropolitan areas where there's people can afford to pay it, get corporate membership. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, this is it. Again, we are this kind of London city brand where people have money. And I think we've done research into these big cities. And I think that's where the growth will come from. Because actually, again, Gymbox is an attitude. It's not about age. It's not about, people, what's your average age? 18 to 25, 30. It's like, doesn't matter. If you've got the right attitude, you come to Gymbox, which is why going to some of these big cities makes sense. Kind of going to the Berlins, the Stockholms, the New Yorks as a brand is kind of where we want to be.
I thought a fun question to finish up in actually was so you talked through your career, right? You've done pizza. Okay, you've done better. You're almost working through your lifestyle.
I'm doing my life cycle, yeah. I'll be working for a funeral home next.
I was going to say, you reached an age where you think, I need to get my fitness sorted out. So like, what comes next for you? Or maybe flip it a different question. What would you invent next if you were to invent a new brand?
That's a great one. I think, look, for me, again, it comes back to passion. I think the bit I've seen in the gym world is it's great that we're all here enjoying fitness and we're getting healthier. I think actually linking that into that kind of community bit around, I've got a huge kind of passion on bringing basically food, drink, gym together, and actually having a pizza bar in a gym is kind of what you want to be doing because I want to spend my time here all day. So I think for me, look, it'll be about, it's that whole holistic kind of lifestyle piece. How do you try to combine community and kind of gym and fitness co-working together? How great could it be that your working desk is here and you've got a spin bike next to it? I think that will be the future of where it'll go. Will that be something that I'll push from a marketing point of view? Who knows? But I think there's a huge future for it.
Yeah, I love the idea of like taking, what if the gym was entertainment? What if work was fun? What if, like the cycle was, you could kind of turn everything on its head. It's a really clever way of thinking through as a challenger brand if you turn everything on its head. Yeah,
I love that idea about kind of walking into the gym and you've got one sign for the gym and one sign for the bar and then deciding which way you're going to go that day and you can kind of mix and match it all the time. But it's there's some exciting times ahead for the brand, so it's fun.
Amazing. Look forward to seeing what's happening next. Rory, thanks for coming on the show. It's been amazing to talk to you and lots of inspiration from what you're doing and long may it continue.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here.
Thank you very much for listening or watching Uncensored CMO. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do hit the subscribe button. wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching, hit subscribe there as well. I'd also love to get a review. Reviews make a big difference on other people discovering the show, so please do leave a review wherever you get your podcast. If you want to contact me, you can do. I'm over on X @UncensoredCMO or on LinkedIn, where I'm under my own name, John Evans. Thanks for listening and watching. I'll see you next time.